Good morning and welcome to the very special episode of the Midweek Mini, or at least it's a very special episode of me. Now you may recall if you listened to last week's Midweek Mini that I talked about the 1979 Woolworth fire that happened in Manchester. Towards the end of that episode, I talked about a fire that very same year that took the life of my cousin who was a firefighter. And that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Triple Studios proudly presents the Midweek Mini, and here's your host, Andrea Lee.
Now, before we get into the tragic way that my cousin passed away, I just want to talk about my cousin and his parents. Now, my cousin that was killed in the fire belonged to my great uncle Carol and great aunt Dorothy Hall. His name was Nathan, and he was Carol and Dot's only child. Uncle Carol is my Mimi's, not my mama, Mimi's only brother. I thought my Uncle Carol was the best man ever, outside of my Papa Nick, of course. Uncle Carol was born just a day before Halloween in 1916. During World War II, Uncle Carol was in the Army, and he served everywhere from the Sahara Desert to the Austrian Alps. He told the best war stories, too, that I wish I had sat down with him and recorded, but I didn't even think about doing anything like that until after he had passed away in 2006. Now, they lived up in Shelby, North Carolina, and a lot of times he and Aunt Dot would come down to visit, and other times we would go to Shelby to see them. Now, my cousin Nathan, he was married to a sweet lady named Cynthia, and the two of them loved to, and they would love us and play with us and everything when we would go to visit. Now, Aunt Dot, she was great also, and she was into crafts like me, and I can remember her showing me this embroidery sewing machine one time when I was at her house, and when I was probably, Courtney was really young, so I was probably in my early 20s. Now, I was nearly drooling after she showed me everything that machine could do. Uncle Carol really loved Courtney. That's my daughter, of course. And he didn't really get a chance to know Alex very well, though, because by the time Alex was born, his health was declining. But man, did he love Courtney. And she really loved him. And one time I even took him to, back when Walmart had portrait studios, and I had their pictures made together. Now, Nathan was a firefighter by trade. And if I remember correctly from his parents, that's all he ever wanted to be. Now, I was only 7 years old that spring when that tragedy struck my family. And I remember it happening, but I don't remember a lot of the details. So I had to do some research, because everyone in the family that was adults when this happened are either gone too, or their memory isn't very good anymore. Now, the fire call on that Friday evening started out as your regular run-of-the-mill fire at J.E.'s. And J.E.'s was a women's clothing store. Well, after the firefighters had been there for about 10 minutes, they thought they had the fire under control, and then the unthinkable happened. With no warning at all, there was an explosion. And with the explosion, a brick wall collapsed, with fire shooting out from where the wall had been standing. One firefighter described it as the building falling down around them, but not everyone was so lucky to have it fall around them. And the explosion also caused a shower of glass and other debris to fall over shoppers in the area. Soon chaos broke out everywhere in the area. Along with all of that was already going on, the fire spread to 3 other stores, gutting them in the process, leaving over $5 million in damage. 10 separate fire companies fought the fires, with a total of around 230 firefighters. Many of those, along with bystanders, had to be treated at local hospitals with varying degrees of injuries. But sadly, those that had got caught by the collapsing wall didn't make it. My cousin Nathan, who was only 27 at the time, was one of those. Also killed were firefighters 44-year-old George Magnus, 24-year-old Donald Milton, 31-year-old Floyd Sharts, and a man named Max Boland, who was a gas employee from the gas company, who was there to turn off the gas. Now, as is usual with pretty much any fire, an investigation was started in June of that year. Now, this fire happened on May the 25th, I believe. I know that it was May, but it was towards the end of May. Now, that investigation revealed that foul play was actually involved in that fire. Now, it was bad enough that our cousin and all the others had lost their lives in the fire, but to find out that it could have been prevented was devastating, to say the least. An owner of one of the stores, his name was James Jeffries, was found guilty of either involuntary manslaughter or voluntary manslaughter. And the reason I say either is because I found some stories that said it was voluntary, while others were saying it's involuntary. And there doesn't seem to be much that I can find about the evidence that led to Jeffries' arrest. But anyway, Jeffries served only 10 years of a 90-year sentence. What kind of justice is that? Families lost sons and fathers, husbands and brothers and uncles, and dear sweet cousins. 4 businesses were destroyed, causing millions of dollars in damage. This guy only served 10 years for it. Now, as you can imagine, my great uncle and aunt were very devastated, losing their only child. Maybe that's why they latched on to us kids and then my daughter when she was born. And I can't blame them. Losing a child, no matter how many you have, has to be the hardest thing in the world for a parent to go through. Thank you for letting me share this personal story with y'all today. That's all I have for this week's Midweek Mini. Come back on Friday night for an all-new What the Friday.